Jagriya at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination, and at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, "How should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita?" Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, "O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times, by means of Prajnaparamita, fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as true since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way, Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangati Bodhisoha. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, "Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice." When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Shandara Samaraya Me Yata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangati Bodhiso Baba Gonja Sanji Gai Nimi Doji She Oba Doji Me Badoji Shewa Doji Ragi Baji Me Dumi Judanji Shetin Karyeso Eri Nunja Yeshu Shewada Medun Beijin Wada Yamba Junjin Bonzon Zonjo Yi Jaji De Janina De Lejo. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love. Let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this Jewel Mandala to you, precious Guru. Edam Guru Rana Mandala Gam Niratayami. Zaji Janam La Janjo Bado Dani Yazoji Dagi Chenye Jipezo Namji Drola Penji Zanye Rubayo Jadan Zaji Yanam La Janjo Bado Dani Yazoji Dagi Chenye Jipezo Namji Drola Penji Zanye Rubayo Jadan Zaji Janam La Janjo Bado Dani Yazoji Dagi Chenye Jipezo Namji Drola Penji Zanye Rubayo.
Samba Jean got Samba Chibisi, Telalu Seva, Samba Jean Motala, and the Jiden Shamati, Lojeva, the Jiden Shamati, taught them, but Jiden Shamati taught them about the John to the Lendi Niganone, Talendica to his mother, Lendewa, Lendi what the Lendi de la Niba Dele Taji, the Bajabala Son, Lendisha Samba, Sheda to Samba, Son and Judusha. Sondo son marba ta tombe le déchets en bas de la moins dans sous ce sambas sajeni je moins de l'engabitu les majiba de majeba les cheveux chumuzebas what les picture what je de marba ta sous ce cheva what ka to le meba
Bless.
Yeah.
So once again, we are looking at Lama Tsong-kha-pa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. And if we look at it according to the outline we've gone through thus far, we find various categories. We find first how to rely upon the teacher, that is the root of the path, and then the next category of the stages of how students train their minds after having relied upon the teacher. So in that category, we find two major headings. First, an exhortation to take full advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity, and then how to take full advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity. Under that second section, how to take full advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity, we have three major headings: training the mind in the stage of the path shared in common with beings of small capacity, training the mind in the stage of the path shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and training the mind in the stages of the path for beings of great capacity. Under the first heading, training the mind in the stage of the path shared in common with persons of small capacity, we have three categories. First, the actual training of thought of a person of small capacity. The measure of the attitude of a person of small capacity. And then third, dispelling any misconceptions related to a person of small capacity. Under the first category, actual training of thought of a person of small capacity, we have two major headings. Developing the state of mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives. And then secondly, relying on a means or a method for achieving happiness in one's next life. The major heading of relying on a means or a method of achieving happiness in one's next life has two categories. First, refuge, and then second, karma results. So we finished the refuge section, and now we're dealing with the karma and its results section. And when we look at the first major heading under the karma and its results section, we find the category of developing the faith of conviction that is the root of all temporary happiness and certain goodness. So the major heading in that section under karma. So developing faith and conviction in karma and its results. So this is what the faith and conviction is. Faith of conviction is it's having faith of conviction in karma and its results. So when we look at that section, we break it down into the major headings. We find that there are three major headings. First, the reflecting on karma and its results generally. Second, reflecting on karma and its results specifically, or with particulars. And then the third category is how to engage in virtue and turn away from non-virtue after you have reflected on karma and its effects in general, in detail, or in general and with the particulars. So these are the major headings. And then when we get to the first major heading, which is the karma and its effects in general, we'll find two major points there. The actual way in which to reflect in general, and then the reflecting on the distinctions among the varieties of karma. So the first category of the actual way to reflect in general has 4 points we've gone over: the certainty of karma, the magnification of karma, not experience the effects of actions that you do not do, and that actions that you have done do not perish. So these are the 4 categories under the actual way in which you reflect in general. And now we're going to be moving on to reflecting on the distinctions among the varieties of karma. So that's where we are now. So we're going to turn to page 216 in the English, where we get into the 10 paths of action. You'll see at the top. So that's where it is. There is outline on 215, but we'll get started probably on 216 just to get everybody to where we are in the text.
Le dan debutan la papa sa ni doa le la jutu temba sa tat marbe tat jetan ne le nga yeson le nga yeson deba la mago jubu kan ro chau mare le nga yeson je gwa la ya gwa jubu kan ro chaba yo mare de an sanje jonde de gwa de mago chau raba ne du ne ne mago ju son boris marbe le la jutu temba so de marbe so temba res roa tene ne du ne le la ne mago ju son mago ju bon chutin de ne son yores le la jutu tenza do te do ta tenju ko de son boris marbe longe dans ne de marbe tat jaje bajna wote ni badl ta tene wote magju de pon gwaju nyaso la jeda ke kechibores magju bon chuti de ane suju la da me tenzon to bale gure ni tu de raje le gure shaju samba le gure saje go bon to bale ya wote gure te mena de magju bon chuti de mewa yina ane 사람이 대상당 타바다 사지셔만 용도 아요 말해서 말봐 오만 조발래 소소 조나다 송제다 라자 졸라다니 게나다 제세나 징에 발레바네 뭐투준 수질래 이메스 어떤 정도 말
Bless up.
하는 줄래 틀 칠로드는 그다음에 지리바 레전런 주송소스
Bless up.
어떤 생이서 말봐
Bless up. So when we move to the section, again, page 216 in the English, we have reflecting on the distinctions among the varieties of karma in two parts, the principal teaching of the 10 passive action and the determination of the effects of actions. The first category, the principal teaching of the 10 passive action, is referring to the main teaching that the Buddha gave about what to engage in and what to abandon, enumerated by 10. So when we look at these passive action, one engages in actions through his or her body, speech, and mind. So the Buddha presented these 10 varieties to show the most important or the most coarse things to adopt and the most coarse important things to abandon. So these 10 paths are the most important or the coarsest things to engage in or abandon through our body, speech, and mind as prescribed by the Buddha. Now the Buddha did not state that this is pervasive. So if it is a misdeed, it does not necessarily mean it is among these 10 paths of action, or if it is a virtue, it is not necessarily among the 10 paths of action. But we're saying that these 10 paths of actions are the real coarse explanation of actions, or the most important ones to initially point out. So the Buddha pointed them out as important points, or the most important points, or the coarse form of behavior modification, if you will. But did state that if it is a misdeed, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's among these 10. So this is what was pointed out. So in Jamyang Sheba's outline, we find first the category, which is the principal teaching of the 10 passive action. And then the second category of the importance of engaging in virtue and abandoning non-virtue. So in Jamyang Sheba's commentary, which is in the four interwoven commentaries, we find this pointed out. And it's important in all areas of practice. So what was stated is that their 10 non-virtuous actions were presented by Lord Buddha, and then Buddha stated that the abandonment of them is necessarily the ethics, which is the abandonment of the 10 non-virtues, and necessarily then the 10 virtues. So the abandonment of the 10 is what the 10 virtues are referring to. So when we find this second point that Jamyang Sheba is making, the importance of engaging in virtue and the importance of abandoning non-virtue, we find that if one wants to go to the higher realms of cyclic existence, to the gods and the humans, it's necessary to engage in this principal teaching of the 10 paths of engaging in virtue and abandoning non-virtue. If one wishes to achieve the results of the hearers or the solitary realizers paths or the bodhisattva paths or the complete Buddhahood, all of these practitioners must rely on these 10 root paths, or these 10 paths of action, the abandonment of the 10 negative ones and engaging in the ethics, which is the abandonment of the 10 non-virtuous ones. One cannot achieve the state of liberation, nor can one achieve the state of omniscience without engaging in these things, and engaging in the positive and abandoning the negative. So we find then a couple of quotes in this section. One from Chandrakirti's entrance into the middle way that points out the needs, where it says, "For ordinary beings, those born from the Buddha's speech, those whose natures are certain as self-enlightened or conquerors' children, there are no causes of certain goodness or high status apart from ethical discipline." So here, the point being made is that all of these results rely upon this ethical behavior and the abandonment of non-virtue, and then specifically these principal behaviors that the Buddha taught. And then we find two quotes also to support this enumeration, one from the Treasury of Knowledge and then another from the Exegesis of Discipline, the Treasury of Knowledge stating, systemizing the most obvious among them, the Buddha said that the paths of action, virtuous or non-virtuous, are 10. So these are the two quotes that help to support the enumeration, and then secondly, the importance and necessity of achieving, or of engaging.
다 송바들와 추추봉하세요. 네, 어디 장다그들 오들 사이니빌도 사지도 어떤 추추봉하도 용도와 사이니빌도래 그와주랑 또다기 상지 수주지스 다 먹이 좀 추추봉거 있나 상지도 그랬어. 아니 레마도 먹 추진하지 마송바지 and I teach by institutes Labina,
So the next category in Jayan Sheba's text is abandoning deception, or what's the word I'm looking for? Abandoning deception. So basically, hypocrisy, that's the word. Abandoning hypocrisy. So abandoning hypocrisy is referring to those beings who have not, do not engage in this practice of the 10 paths of virtue and so forth. And they believe that these 10 paths of virtue will not will not make you become a Buddha, that these simple 10 paths aren't important and they will not make you become a Buddha. So here, this section is to negate that idea because it's necessary to have these 10 paths of action, the abandonment of the negative and the engaging in the positive, in order to achieve the state of Buddhahood. So those practitioners who state that they are a Mahayanist but don't state the importance of these 10 passive actions are actually engaging in hypocrisy or in deception. So it's the abandonment of that hypocrisy of saying that one is a Mahayanist but not finding this introductory behavior modification as importance related to being a Mahayanist, when it is essential of central importance.
다 레랑 주주 때마다 레당 데비텐라 포바스 니바도 레당 데비텐라 포바도 말 어디 사지도 구슬 때잖아 레당 데비텐라 포발라 소마르베
Lesso.
나빌레랑도 카피 렌데당 레전다의 gente 사지 소티도 어디 구슬 때잖아.
So then now we move on to page 218. In the English, the determination of the effects of actions, or how effects are the effects of actions are determined. And there are 3 points or parts that are made here. Black actions and their effects. This is out of the Tibetan. Here it says non-virtuous, but just going back to that, they've chosen to explain the translation as opposed to directly translating it. So I'm going to use the black actions and their effects, white actions and their effects, a presentation of other classifications of karma. So these are the 3 categories which will explain the determination of the effects of actions.
다 너무 나비 렌데시 받을라 송렌도 송 가르사네 나비 네 담불라 송 나비 렌데고다 지양기 쳐봐 대다 근데 부터 사지 송 되는도 나비 렌데고다 지양기 쳐봐 나비 렌데고서 다네 는 가서 뒤바 먹어 주도 Coast Bobo Timber. Chiang Chabas Deba Mago Chuchu Nola, Kashi Deba Chayore, Kashi Deba Chum, Hoteshiduro, Chiang Chabas, and the Dag Debu Temba, Lechot and Debu Kariungure, Din Debu Kariungure, Chumul Debu Kariungure, what does it?
Ale Sumba.
Oh, Sumba. Okay. The Dag Debu Tembas.
So the determination of the effects of actions. First, non-virtuous actions and their effects, or black actions and their effects. So black actions and their effects here are referring to those 10 non-virtuous actions and their results. white actions and their effects refers to the 10 virtuous actions and their results. And a presentation of other classifications of karma is the explanations of other points that are made. So karma that is great because of its basis and so forth. A great level of karma, a medium level of karma, a small level of karma. So these are other classifications of karma that will fall into this category. What makes a karma greater, or and so forth, than other karmas. So that are similar deeds, that are similar to deeds to them. So that will be explained in this part. So we begin then with black actions and their effects, which are again non-virtuous actions and their effects, beginning with killing.
Less
so. So when we say great, medium, and small, we're speaking of the degrees of karma. So the greatest degree, so the great level of karma, the great degree of karma gives rise, of negative karma rather, gives rise to rebirth in the hell realm. A medium degree of negative karma gives rise to rebirth in a hungry ghost realm, and a small degree of negative karma gives rise to rebirth into the animal realm. And then the opposite is also true. A great degree of virtue gives rise to rebirth in the gods realm. A medium degree of virtue gives rise to rebirth in the demigods realm. And then a small degree of virtue gives rise to a human rebirth. So this is how we explain the small, medium, and great degrees of karma and their results.
And the Sijig Sujavina, Sujavilet Sagres, Teremato, Susu Sebina, Joal Debayor, Sujavi Lemo de Umares, what did Sujava said, Rally Jambi, and that is Sujava, and the Lewis Tomeg, Nanjujevi Samarva, Wool Kaleles one.
So when we look at killing, what is killing? So killing specifically means separating a sentient being from their life. So it's taking a sentient being and separating them from their life. Or you can also call it life force, or from their life force. Tso is life, or life force. So separating them from that life. So once you do that, and so it's separating another. So another is referring to a being outside of yourself. So separating another from a sentient being from his or her or its life. So this is how we define killing. It's when we separate another sentient beings from their life. So they're killed, basically. That is what killing is, when they are separated from this particular life. And I know I repeated that a bunch of times, but I'm trying to get it exactly accurate based on what Rinpoche is technically saying. So when we look at the suicide, because there isn't an external person involved, we can't say that this is categorically killing. We can say that it is separating from potential future and it's causing negativity, but we cannot say that it's killing, because the basis of killing has to be a different sentient being or an outsider that we separate from their life. And then we get into points made from the Bodhisattva Bhumis by Master Asanga that support these points and so forth.
Sujabatella, do I go so? Papa to me, Sadanga, Donani, Doat Chimbere. Do I go so letene, what to Sujabilate, Chichunga Sangus Rava, Nasangus Barza, Tela Doa, Jetan, Duchetan, Sambatan, Yamutan, Tatude, Natsangu, Sujabilate, Yuala, and the Chichun Natsangures. nga sang song shas
Lessa.
song jang da jirim je go de ne du shi da nyomoni de samba du ne song ji zu sha de ge des je samba je sen je samba de nyomo dan du shi nga le samba dan du ne ji dang je samba tene joas ta su je ba ina su je le ga je ro da mandatan chundan o de le ga je ro de joa lo mar ba sa je samba joa ta tu zna o de su de joa ti jen je su de ga so na tene su je le de mar ba ta tu o de jin du ne song ge na tu de bres en ge ga mar es je me je
Lessa.
doa je dans du chez dans samba dans nyomo dans tato de ne suje bile de la tene chichu na nga chang go song dos ngar song jans baba song du chez dans nyomo ni be de samba du ne song de ji dang de joa ne be jane ane song je ane je dans je dans samba dans joa dans tatous je tout ne sais pas ina ne debe yor tout degres ne suje bele de yongala je changure suyebe sentient ji gures samba changure samba de lan du je dans ne nyomo ne c'est de que wote son ji dans ro samba dans je dans samba dans joa c'est ta sube joa de marbe sube joa ane chun ya da wo de ge ane wo de soya ge le kan da mu da che yo joa je ta tu de di jin je ne ba le de su de ga su na ane su je bi le de yong res su je bi le ngo je de yong res
Okay.
je no ne su ma to ma sa na wo de di ba yo de su je bi le ngo je yong ma re ni ma to ma sa na yong ma re je chang go je chang na su je bi le de ngo je yong res what is on this
So then we find the explanation of what killing is. So this is according to, it says, the Compendium of Determinations. So when we look at Master Asanga's works, we find the 5 treatises on the levels and then the 2 compendiums. So Master Asanga's compendiums, the 2 compendiums, this is one of the compendiums. And then the levels of yogic deeds. No, I'm sorry. So this is one of the 2 compendiums. So it says the Compendium of Determinations teaches this in 5 categories: basis, perception, attitude, affliction, and conclusion. However, you can condense the middle 3 into the category of attitude and add the category of performance to give a condensed presentation of each of the paths of action in 4 categories: basis, attitude, performance, and culmination. So here, such a presentation is easy to understand, and there is no contradiction between it and the intention in Asanga's teaching. So here, it states that one can take the second, make a major heading called attitude, and take the second, third, and fourth category of the 5 and put them together and call them attitude. So you're putting perception, attitude, and affliction together under the major heading of attitude. So making for first basis, attitude, which then includes those other 2 as well, performance and culmination. So in order for a path, a non-virtuous path of killing to take place, there have to be these 4 things. So the basis here is another sentient being. So here the basis is another sentient being. The attitude is the attitude to kill. The preparation, the getting the weapon, the getting all the things that are necessary in order to conclude, to have the conclusion you're looking for, which is separating a sentient being from his or her its life. And then the performance is the actual killing, the actual activity of killing, and then the culmination is when the sentient being is separated from his or her its life. So once the sentient being is separated from their lives, at that point in time, there is a complete karmic path of killing. So these four things must be present in order for there to be a karmic path of killing. Dixon.
Oje. Tatala sujebi jenes ta je samba sujebi letala je samba joa tatu je chango ba yin so dan anu sujebi je kan de ja wo res na sujebi jene su dan de sentient des sujebi je shoa sana su yu kenge sentient je ja wo res.
So we look at what we kill, what is the basis of killing. It's a sentient being who has a life. So a sentient being who is alive or has a life is other sentient being who is alive or has a life is the basis that we are for killing.
But na xin de jue ba yin na xin jue de xin le su yue ma des. Xin le su ga jin de yue ma, xin le jue yue ma de, she ba yue ma des. Su se gen de jue da she ba ga ro ge ten ji la an su la gres. Xin le jue da na ji ga ro ge ten de yue ma des.
Jue sena?
Jue cha bu ha.
Oh, okay.
Lu cha bu duwa. Xin wo de ga zu bu cha bu na ji de xin le mu duwa. What the drug ten de yue ma des, me zang su yue ma des. And the xin le she ba yue ma des. She ba me zang she ba ten su de yue ma des. Se je yin na ko le an she ba yue re na drug yue des. Se je yin na drug yue cha ko ma zu me se je tu ga lo se je re de drug yue ma ro. Zu yue ma ro. Yin na ji yue ro. Na ji ge ten. What the san ta wo.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when we look at, for instance, cutting down a tree or ending the tree's quote-unquote life, there isn't real life there by the terms that we're speaking of, because in order for there to be life, there has to be among the two consciousness and or warmth. It's a word I wasn't sure of, and Rinpoche said warmth, heat. So there might be a better word to use for this one, but it's the warmth that the body that someone is alive creates. Now, the reason that we say among is because a formless realm being does not have this warmth, but they have consciousness. So a being in the formless realm does not have this feeling of warmth, but he or she does have consciousness. So this qualifies them as being alive, being an alive sentient being that is alive. Make sure I got everything. So when we're cutting down a tree, we're not actually killing. We're not ending a life because there isn't consciousness, nor is there this warmth, this inner warmth.
Sudan debi sentient beings go marbe. Sudan debi sentient te an so ba borani so na so ba ina so da yoare de ne joa deba joa so je le ka je ba de ge so ya le ka je ba de deba de yoare ina tatu yo mares tatu ne so je so ba de me dro da tatu me ba la gune Nanju should be sales, Papa to make Don Nani, Nanju should be Sale, Sucha and Sucha Paribu Cheson sauce, Sucha Beleka to Sucha Paribus, Ranley Jambi Paribusi, so by son was, and the Sucha Belete, Ranley Jambi, Saint James of Gugres, Son so Hosa, what there.
So then we have more points made from Asanga's levels of yogic deeds. It says, among these, the basis of killing is a being who is alive. Moreover, the levels of yogic deeds adds the qualification other, as in another living being. This is in consideration of cases of suicide when there is a sin of commission that lacks culmination. So there is no way for the end or the culmination to take place if the person has committed suicide because he or she isn't there for the culmination of the karma because they are dead. So this is what is meant by that in this case. Because all four qualifications aren't present, suicide would not be considered a path of killing, a path of karmic path of killing.
These
four have to be present for there to be killing.
Samba son le Dushis, that Dushis and the Mary, the Larisas, shitting and then Dushilog Marvin Dushi. The Mary, the Laris, Dushiva, Ham Dushiva, the Lare, the Mendushiva, the Mary, the Shires, what in the San Lugila, Dushilo the Marvin Dushi. Dushi. Dushine, that Dushitala. That Dushit Samba is Logorota. Dushit Samba Gandasana, the Mereshas Sangurota, the Mere Sanguare, Mere Dusheware, Samba and Dushis water in
Tambo.
On Dushi. That Dushit and the Mere and the Laris Santown to somebody.
Less so.
And the Dushit is
less so.
What the Dushit things are. That Dushi is Dushi de la Givoris. Dushi Nigetes Sentient Tabula, Sentient Dushebatan, Sentient Meba Dushebanije, Sentient the Sentient Dushesuna, Sentient the Sentient Dushesuna, and the co Luton Tumariba. Taba dream Drill dream by Shesuna Luton Turota.
Less so.
Drill the dream by Shesuna, Lulu.
Okay.
Sentient the Sentient by Shesuna, do shit and do this. Sentient the Sentient by him, do Shesuna, Kululu shade and Marba.
Low shit, okay.
Sheva dance. Sentient by him, Sentient Mebara, Sentient Meba do Sheva. Sentient Maimba, Sentient Maim do Sheva to Luton Turota. Sentient Maimba, Sentient Yema do Shesuna, Lulu shade.
Less so, sell do. Dixon.
Yeah.
Okay.
This one, what did you say now?
Okay. Because it lacks culmination. Concerning the aspects of attitude. So we begin now to go over aspects of attitude, which is the second category. So we've gone over basis and then now attitude. So it says perception, motivation, and affliction. Perception has 4 types. We can also translate this word as discrimination. Discrimination is how we differentiate between items, between a human. This is a human. This is a god. This is a tree. This is not a tree. This is not a human. So this is, Rinpoche I think gave a couple more examples, and I'm sorry I missed them. But they're just more examples of differentiating between objects. This is what this is, that is what this is, that is what that is. So this is called the discrimination. Here it's translated as perception, which is also a way to translate it. Form, feeling, perception. In the Heart Sutra, it's the same word. So we can also use discrimination. So here, there are 4 types. So first, it says perceiving a living being that the basis to be a living being. So this is a correct view. This is establishing as the basis a living being. And it's a correct establishment because it actually is a living being. So this is a correct view. The second is a wrong view, which is perceiving a living being not to be a living being. So here, this is an incorrect perception. So here, 2 of these are correct and 2 of these are incorrect. So when we have, for example, the rope that we mistakenly believe is a snake in a dimly lit room, knowing that it is a rope is a non-mistaken view. Believing that it is a snake is a mistaken view, which would categorically fall perceiving a living being not to be a living being. So something that is a being, you're thinking is not a being. In the case of the rope, you're thinking it's not a rope, you're thinking it's a snake. So there's a mistaken perception. So the first case is a non-mistaken perception, where the object of observation is correctly cognized. The second is a mistaken perception, where the object of observation is incorrectly cognized. So the third category, perceiving what is not a living being not to be a living being, is a correct perception. So you're establishing this thing as the basis to not be a living being, and it really isn't. So this is a correct view. But if you are to establish what is not a living being to be a living being, then this is an incorrect perception. So first, when we have this basis, we have to have the attitude that discriminates between what the basis is or isn't in order for it to be a full path of killing, because it has to be another sentient being as the basis which we're to separate the life of. So we have to discriminate as to what the basis is or isn't by our consciousness. So this is done through thinking. So this is an actual action of thinking. Discrimination is an action of thinking, an act of thinking. So these are the four, and the first and third are non-mistaken. The attitudes concerning them are non-mistaken. So those would be the ones that would need to be present. Less so. Tangodan somba semi mipa. Okay, so less so. Less so.
That Senje meba la senje imba santana, senje meba the senje marwa.
Less so.
So lulu shade.
Less so.
Sumbat marwa.
Less so.
Sumbaje. And the jibat the senje meba senje to shibas lulu shimber. Tambu the sumbat lulu tenje.
Less so.
Niba
so then it says the first and third perceptions are accurate, whereas the second and fourth are mistaken. So the first and third are non-mistaken with regard to the basis. So non-mistaken discrimination with regard to the basis. So the first is perceiving a living being, the basis to be a living being. So you've established a living being as a living being. So this is a non-mistaken establishment. And then the third is a non-mistaken establishment, perceiving what is not a living being not to be a living being. So this is establishing the basis correctly through a non-mistaken way of looking at it. The second and the fourth are mistaken views, perceiving perceiving a living being not to be a living being. So something that is alive you think is not a living being. So this is a mistaken view with regard to the basis. And then the fourth, perceiving what isn't a living being to be a living being. So thinking something that is not living, a living being as defined by alive, in this case sentient being, to be a living being. Which is a mistaken view. So these are the four possibilities in terms of attitude, two of them being mistaken, two of them being non-mistaken with regard to the basis, the discrimination of the basis.
And the Senje Yimba Tuan Yujiro. Doshi was all things on my back. Senje Yimba Tuan. Tea just run there, Tuba Jung Marba. Senje Yimba Senje Wunyabe, Tuba Jungro. Meshi to Tuba Nindo.
So first to establish you have an eye consciousness that sees a living being. So an eye consciousness apprehends a living being, but then there's a doubt as to whether there or not there is a living being there. So you see it, and then you then discriminate as to whether or not it is a living being. So this is the order of events. First you see something with your eyes and say that's a living being, and then this doubt arises that then is clarified by one's discrimination.
Ta Oma Tanju was in a Sijin Yimba to Miki Shiba there, Trishi, and Sijin Yimba Shibi each Shiba de la Trishi, Lujima is, Lutin so Marva. Oma Tanju was in the
Yanju Surana. The Oma Tanju Dene?
Oma Tanju was in 주다 마지요로 주다 마지요 나는 엄마 다녀오게 네 세제임바 또 미기셔가지고로 미기셔가 주지 주시 아이스나 주시 로시마이 로던주이스 what 말봐
Truche Ale.
주시도 로실 때는 무슨 말봐 뭐
Ale.
로시나
Hako Mare.
로시나 주시임죠 주시나 로시임 맞아로 세제임바 시비 네 미기셔바다 엄마 다녀오다 보시나
So when I might have to look this up, but when we're looking at the tenet systems, according to the Madhyamika Prasangika view, an I consciousness seeing a human that is a human is, I think we have to use wrong and mistaken here. I've been using mistaken, but there's truche and luche. Mistaken and wrong. So it would be a mistaken view if the I consciousness apprehends because of the lack of discrimination, but not a wrong view. So the garshene, the lushe mayan, the mishe, the zutona, garshene, the...
Sije imbala shebi migi sheba juro. Ku sije imba de yodroda. Sije de yoro. Lo lushe mare, lo tuntunes. Juyul chu mares. Juyul machubares. Hayul chubais.
Yichu.
Yichu is a mal trushi. What the trushi done? Lori do not know Jeva and Loshi said you marvel Loshi down. Trushi the news showed the Trushi my meal. Lori no know what the Moshe later.
So we find this in the maybe a break I can maybe a break I can get to what word English we're using to differentiate, because it's in the mind and awareness teaching, in the Lorig teaching, where we find the difference between this wrong view and mistaken view. So we find the differentiation in there. And the reason I asked Rinpoche if it's a correctly assuming consciousness at that point. He said, no, it's different than that. So I have to look it up. But he's saying that because the I consciousness is seeing a human that's a human, it's not a wrong view, but it's a mistaken view because it's not supported. It's just an observation at that point. So it's not complete. So we'll move on at this point, but I'll look up, see if I can, in a lexicon perspective, make it a little clearer, because I feel like it's not yet. So why, Rinpoche is going to answer, why is this a mistaken view if the I consciousness establishes a human being as a human being? Because it observes it as being truly established. I see. So we're going to there. So the I consciousness is observing it as being truly the Dhamma Drupa Kela, the Mikshe. So it observes it or experiences it rather as being true. So the I consciousness experiences it as being truly established. So that's why it's mistaken. So because of it's experiencing the object, a person that's alive, as being truly established. But it's not a wrong view because that person is a person alive. So it's mistaken. This explanation of mistaken view and wrong view, we're using these two words, is according to the Madhyamika Prasangika view. So Rinpoche said among the tenet systems, we find the highest tenet system to be the Prasangika view, and the statement is that when I consciousness, for instance, observes a form, it is mistaken because it experiences the true establishment of that form, but is not a wrong view because it is a form. So it's not establishing it incorrectly with regard to what its functionality is or conventional function is.
Da zoze meshe de lo she maris. Ku zoze meshe zo she woro. Zo tseme tubaro. Zo tseme tuba yeza rang ju lo ma chores. Zo tseme tubes.
So it's not a wrong view because it's so when an I consciousness apprehends a form, it's apprehending it through valid cognition. So because it is apprehending it through valid cognition, it is not lushe mayin. It is not a wrong consciousness. So I think it's wrong consciousness and mistaken consciousness. So it's not a wrong consciousness because it is established by an I consciousness with valid cognition. So this is the reason it's not wrong, but it's mistaken because it's experiencing its true establishment.
다 생전임을 통해 미기 시바데 최시인 로시마이 로시마이데 고 생전임을 쓰면 주베지
Less so.
생전임을 쓰면 주다 and kullu도 되res.
So why is it when the I consciousness observes a sentient being that is a sentient being, not a wrong consciousness but a mistaken consciousness? It's not a wrong consciousness because that sentient being can be established through valid cognition. So because that sentient being is established through valid cognition by the I consciousness, it is not a wrong consciousness. But what is it's experiencing, which is the true establishment, is mistaken. So it's a mistaken consciousness.
So
scientists need to study and look at this. You understand that? So that scientists can practice this. And so there's two new books with a combination. Rinpoche says that combine Buddhism and science. I don't know of these books. So Rinpoche says there's two new books that combine Buddhism and science. So we'll have to look at what the scientific view is related to a wrong consciousness versus a mistaken consciousness and what the differences would be there. So there's two texts that the Dalai Lama presented in Dharamsala related to this. So I'm sure you can research and look this up for more details around it. But there are two texts now that are combining the two. Cha.
So when
we look at this mistaken view and wrong consciousness, we would apply the same kind of concepts to all phenomena because it would be the same way when we're establishing these things and talking about them. We would apply this to all phenomena. Then the Sanjay mi she miki nampa sheba zutuna the charpa majun.
Sanjay Mishi the Debatro Tomaris, Debatro Tenzin Pacha Ponsim, Pacha Ponsa Tomaris. Could Debatro Ton de Carasana, Denzing Pacha the Mabon and Susan, Tiongi Debatro non the waters.
Then Teme da Jumba.
Teme da Jumba, so my JB, Gonzaga Juji, Kundu she be looking up, Debatro not Chelsea.
Ale, then Truche Ure. Ale. So I was asking Rinpoche about a Buddha. So a Buddha cognizes a form. A Buddha does not have this experience of true establishment. So it's not pervasive. If there is an I consciousness observing a form, if it's the Buddhas, then there isn't this presence of mistaken view because there's not the experience of true establishment. And Rinpoche said the line is, if the imprints the obstructions to omniscience, the imprints of the afflictions, have not been removed, then there still is this experience. So I asked Rinpoche if Sanjay Mayimba Yina Trushe Yubicha.
Sanjay Mayimba Ganzaga Juji, Kundu Shibi Kundula may look and go never do another channels.
Then the Sanjay Mayimba Kuna Kanga. So all. So there is this. If a being is not a Buddha, then they necessarily have this mistaken view. Now Rinpoche is saying it's not a coarse mistaken view. It's related to the imprints of the afflictions, but there still is this mistaken experience that takes place. That we could get into more later, but there's a mistaken experience related to the natural afflictions, imprints of the natural afflictions. The what are the natural and the created? There's the two kinds of afflictions. What is it? Acquired. The natural occurring and the acquired afflictions. So there aren't acquired afflictions. The natural occurring ones, the imprints of the nature ones, are the ones that are left over. The gun. Yeah. So we'll leave it at that for now.
Sentient member do Sheba Sombaje, Jiba, Sombaje, sentient member, sentient do Sheba Zero. Tambu and somebody Loma Chua Yins, Tambu the sentient do Sheba to Marve, sentient to make Sheba down, sentient to what to Ruata. Somebody, sentient member, sentient member do Sheba. Somebody Loma Chua is. And nearby the somebody to Lulu Sheres, Sejela Meba to Shes on Lulu Zero. Seja Meba Seja Dushin Lulu Zero. What the nearby Jeba Lulu Sheres, nearby Jebane, Chua was.
That's so. So then there are 4 types of perception or discrimination. So the first and the third perceptions are accurate, whereas the second and fourth are mistaken. So perceiving a living being, the basis to be a living being, and perceiving what is not a living being, not to be a living being, are not wrong perceptions or wrong discrimination. Perceiving a living being not to be a living being, and perceiving what is not a living being to be a living being. Let me go back. I think I did that wrong. So the first and third are correct perceptions. So the ones that I just went over are correct. I think I labeled them as wrong, so I apologize. Are correct perceptions, non-mistaken perceptions. The second and the fourth are mistaken or wrong perceptions. So this is what is meant by this: that perceiving a living being not to be a living being and perceiving what is not a living being to be a living being is a wrong consciousness. Okay, so we'll take a short break. So in this book they differentiate. They use wrong consciousness and mistaken view. So they use mistaken for the case which is the case that an I consciousness is mistaken with regard to its object because it's cognizing this nature to be truly established, but it's not wrong because the object, if the object is correctly cognized, then it's not wrong. So this is how the mistaken and wrong are differentiated according to the low-rig. And then all inferential cognitions are mistaken because they rely on meaning generalities. And so forth. So it's all in here if you want to look it up.
Ngoji di mebe tetabala dushe macho kujins and dushe macho kujins yu du su kanya so jamba kono chela chuba yona dushe macho mogusos ta jermis de marbe ta su jebele ne na chujin kona kaza chujin se ge yona chujin kona so gi kujibu se ge yenda se ge mes nyam sama se bayina and could learn Lady Sona Sujo Dibongo Yomaris. Takulon Shille, Sundajin, Swing, saying Yaba, Yina, Dushi Trimachi Yomade, Sujo Leongoris. The La Colon Sheda, Penas, Colon Sheda, Pena, Lejin Kona, say Janes, Lejin Kona, say Jane, Joatamba Nas, Lejin say Legat Sambana. Chujin to Nune Senas, Lejit Chujin Nune, Chujin Sebaina, Sena, Muji Sujo Deba Yomaris, Deba Maybe, Tatabula, Dushimacho Gushins, Collegian Kona Sejan Bizano Deba, you know what Dushimacho Gogres, Juitu Kanlayan, Sujaba, Juitu Sujabelega, because sentient son de jin so nya ba yoba ina du shi tru ma chi yo ma tru na di ba yong gore ma tru na su jo di ba yong gore ju du su kan shon ya so nya ba ku long she la shu ba yue na du shi ma tru mo go so sa wo de ji ju gu no le ju.
So then it says, in some cases there may be a specific motivation. For example, someone may plan to kill only someone called Devadatta, and he or she then commits murder. However, if this person mistakes Yajnadatta for Devadatta and kills him instead, there is no actual sin, completed action of killing. Hence, such an action of killing requires an accurate perception. If at the time of performance the killer has a general motivation, thinking that no matter what happens he or she will kill, an accurate perception is not necessary. Know this to be the case for any of the remaining 9 non-virtuous actions. So in the case of killing, if a person has the motivation to kill, and that sets out to kill a specific individual, but then accidentally or for some reason kills another person than the person that they set out to kill, then this does not complete the path of action of killing, because the perception itself and the motivation are directed at the person who ends up dying. So this isn't a complete path of killing. Now, if, for instance, though, the person is thinking that they're going to kill whoever, or generally going to kill, and they go out, they don't have anyone specific in mind, they haven't established this living being as the person that they are going to kill, but they create some kind of killing because they're planning on going out and doing it, then this also is a complete path of killing. So when this would be a path of killing if the person is set out to kill whoever, no matter what, or establishes a specific person that they are going to kill and completes that act related to that specific person that they are going to kill. If accidentally or by way another person is killed, this is not considered technically in this case the act of act of killing. So know this to be the case for any of the remaining non-virtuous actions. The perception and the motivation here are determining the determining factors relating to the killing at this point.
So here,
know this to be the case for any of the remaining non-virtuous, 9 non-virtues. This is the 10th non-virtue, if you will, killing. So we've gone over the facts around killing, and we can apply these same points related to perception, basis perception, basis, attitude, performance, and culmination to all the rest of these. So the way that this has been explained here can be applied to the other 9 non-virtuous activities as well. Mota Garpo? So in looking at this and looking at how discrimination plays a role, if we look at the act of stealing, if you set out to steal a white car, but you somehow steal a red car, then the discrimination isn't present because you are... It's not a complete act of stealing. So this is how we would apply this same point to stealing that we do to killing. If you set out to steal that white car and you end up with that red car, it's not the stealing because the discrimination, the motivation wasn't there to make it a complete completion.
So
this is what is meant by know this to be the case for any of the remaining 9 non-virtuous actions.
So when we
look at the sexual misconduct, Rinpoche was saying this discrimination, how does it play a role? Just stated it. So,
10 ans 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 네, 삼발을 손에 두시다. nyumu ta samba song ji dang ro da ta nyumu de kar se na nyumu de do song kan yo ro de cha kong ro ne de mu song kan yo ro ku ne la wa ji go res no was kulon ne ta samba ji kulon ta kulon ne wa de sue ban de ba sue gu samba de kulon res kulon ma ba sue ban de ba wo sa o te kale ju na.
So here, when we look at these points that we're making, these categorically fall under the three aspects of attitude. So we've gone over the perception, and then the motivation, and now we're going to go over the affliction. So the motivation is what is causing, the thinking that's causing one to engage in the action. So it's the thinking, it's what one is thinking about that causes him or her to engage. So this is the what is meant by motivation. And here, the motivation in this case of killing is the motivation to kill, the wanting to kill. So that's the point that is made. So, Dene?
What the samba Dushi samba kunyamu sumut samba nduba isaro samba dushi tsaswan dushi tsaje tenne wat samba de wat ba samba tantan de marba samba kunun zaba kunun
Lessa.
Kunun wat suba de samba de bare da joa marba joa suje bi joa suje le ga je wuro ta suje le kamanda ta ande wat chencha ta wat tenne ke suje bi joa nes joa las joa ne rangi sheba joa ne rangi sheba jen she du juba ni ga kan she jan da te sa ta suje bi le ga te ane rangi suje bi le ga jen ne se na digre jen le nga ja ne digre chuno wat ku suru chis la ja ina wat ku suru na ane suje bi le de kole yongre ane la ken le yongre ni ga kan she jan da te sa yu ngo ne ta juwa kar jo le suje bi le ga kar je go sana chön mar chön manda ta chötan tu mar ba chön nas to go to tin se ya manda chön se ya trgi se ya to gas renga to jo se ya wo to so lo no suje bi le sa go do renga je go ne juwa she bala la su ba kan ro ho sa kan ro ho so de suje bi juwa de sho sa chön ji chön wo be mar ba ane toji ane khang tu ja no
Toja.
juwa she wa la su ba kan ro ho suje juwa do de ane ji ne de ne so gre so de ju kale ju na.
The affliction is any of the three mental poisons, and the motivation is the desire to kill. As for the performance, it makes no difference whether performers do it themselves or cause someone else to do it. The nature of the performance is killing by way of a weapon, poison, a spell, or a magic, or the like. So here, the actual one engages in killing by way of, and then these are some examples of weapons such as guns or knives or poisons or some black magic, a spell. So these are all the ways in which then someone can die. And dusum, Sena? Ducha, the Shedan Timu. Okay.
Kondro Shedan.
Okay. Okay. So the affliction is any of the three mental poisons. So here this is referring to attachment, hatred, or ignorance. So when we're looking at the category of affliction, these are what the affliction is referring to. So it's mixed with any among attachment, hatred, or ignorance, or delusion. And then the motivation, the thinking, is the desire to kill. So the motivation or the thinking is that to kill. So sampa dupi. So the thinking is to kill. Sampa.
랭아 죽고네 요아셰바 송모스 편에 소다거든 소주야 내가 뜻을 뭐뭐요다 라소바 강원 오사 강원 군에 네 바르고도 소소나 와데 소주 비와르는 거지로다.
The Yanjasuna, the
소주 비와들에 지메지 춘당 춘당 랭아 토자바 강고 말어.
Lesso.
대마임 소주 비와 뭐 수사.
Oh, Lesso.
강원 오사.
Lesso. So when we remove a life from someone, we find that there are examples of ways to do it here, but there's many, many other ways besides a weapon or poison or a spell, etc. So there are many other ways than this to kill, to engage in the act of taking someone's life.
다제 삼바 요아 타투 지바도 말베 지바 타투도 간내자 그러잖아. 지바 타투네 요아 디 젠제 수바보드게 요아 춘당 도당 돌아수비 요아시비 젠제 바르바 디청 뒤젠제 셔와 우사 버드 수제비 요아시비 수제비 레카제비 젠제 네 바르부청 뒤제제 셔송나 되는 수제비레 용그레스다.
It's zoo. Got it. The long carne.
늘 하다냐도 쇼로 응면을 제시로스.
Oh, okay.
다 수제비려고 뜻서 말베. 다 맞지기 전다 수업이나 그 시칼라면데 그 맛이 공을 지셔서나 수학에 지셔서나 그 수제비레 용고 말이지 그렇다.
The New York la, the Namdro, the Nangla, the Khensur, the Kamba Chenmo,
뭐세로.
Mem Seson, the Seiken, Ran Seson, Nyamdu. The Chikshena did drop do.
다 그때는 뭐 동자 소문이 세 말베. 나도 뭐 세서.
Yene, the Seiken, Namdu Nangla.
그 맛이 공을 시대시여나 그 수제비레 용거래.
Lesso.
제다 맛이 공을 코셔여나 수제비 용도 용고 말았어.
Lesso.
하다냐 냥도 시여나 용고 말았어.
Lesso.
하다 냥도 시와라 뭐면 르젠지로.
Lesso.
수케다 안에 수제가 세진이부터
Lesso.
수케다 그냥 시나 수제비 용고 말았어. 수케다 수제니 냥도 시나 용고 말았어. 맛이 공을 시켜주고 그랬어.
You can't saw. Then Sansan Kache Banjadu. Then Mekanga Sedu, Kon Sedu. Then Khensur Suchu Yoma.
어떻게 답이
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me do this first. So the last part is the culmination. So this is the fourth category. The culmination is the death of another on the account of a performance, either at that point in time or at another point in time. And then it says in the Abhidharma, the Treasury of Knowledge, if the killer dies prior to or at the same time as the victim, there is no actual infraction, since the killer has then assumed another life. So if the person who is doing the killing dies at the same time as the person that they are killing, then there isn't the completion, the culmination, the completion of the act, so we don't say it's a complete path of karma of killing. So the question I asked Rinpoche was 9/11. When the people in the plane direct the plane into the building, have they killed people? And Rinpoche said, yes and no. Those people that die before the people in the plane who are causing this to happen, if they die before them, then they complete an act of killing. But if they die at the same time or after them, then those are not karmic acts of killing. And then the other example I asked about was the suicide bombing. And Rinpoche said in the case of suicide bombing, we have a few things happening here, but the motivation is to kill mass amounts of people. If they all die together, then there's actually not a karma of killing in the case if they die at the same time when the bomb goes off. So that was what I was asking Rinpoche about when in those kind of examples that we all can relate to, and we would immediately say that's killing, and it's interesting to look at it this way. So that was the
Yeah, okay.
I'm just going to relate to that. So if you are being ordered to kill, say you're a soldier, or you're a soldier and you're in a situation where you might not personally have the motivation to kill, but it's you took on that by becoming, being in the military. Does that in any way change the karmic result?
Kongyi true ma the American Sinzi the ma jobo. Then kon the chiranso the ma ken the chiranso kon se. Yene the ma ken the se gugumare gulung yomare. Then kon su chubi lei yurbe. Kon se gugumare yene the Sinzi lason the kon se rona. Then sun san kon se son yene kon gulung yomare. Con gapo mare, yene the Sinzi lason. Dan ma leka chena, then the Sinzi lana, then leka chegu. Then the less so. The concept. Both of them require the karma of killing. The person who does the killing, as well as the one who ordered it to be done. So,
mala suba tenji taji sheba pujines mala suba maja jus lava ina na la gente ta maja se deba jiba yongores da.
So it's stated that those who engage in a war and those who order the war to be engaged in are equally responsible for the karma of killing, or something like this. So those who ordered it and those who engaged in it are equally responsible when it comes to the karma. Then the ma ken the gulum me the ngash the kon ama the juje the dibala then kon the dendru jewa nyawa jewa yomare gang is in a deepa chambo yomare.
To kulu chele chi kulu doja yona. I
was asking Rinpoche, though, about the story of Manakabila, whose mother ordered him to call the names, and then he, because he didn't really want to do this, had a little, was able to be born into the, I'm shortening the story, born into an animal realm as opposed to a hell realm where his mother was born, who ordered him to engage in this name calling. So Rinpoche said there are still degrees within all of these examples that the motivation of the individual produces, that the motivation of the individual plays into, then creates a greater experience because of the motivation. I know I did that kind of choppy, but so the motivation itself kind of makes the experience greater or less. So there's varying degrees even within this conversation based on the motivation. Sorry, that was choppy. The Triwa Sum.
Okay. Yeah.
Rinpoche said questions are good.
I was just, I have a tendency to want to think of this as analogous in a way to the legal systems in the West, where there's never simply killing. There's murder, 1, 2, 3, manslaughter. And it all has to do with levels of premeditation and whatnot. Is that counterintuitive to what we're doing, or is it kind of on the right track?
The Ari tree, Rimbo Yure, the Suchupa, the Kashe, the Tse Kanga Kande. Me kashe lo ju Tsong-kha-pa. Gang sena the garshene chiran se son. Then the bit garchele. The drop due. Gang sena ari tree. The kongi tree.
Ari law.
This is the United States' law.
Ari law is landing law. The Ari law kagaris.
So the karma, the law of karma and its results, and the law of the United States are different. So he's saying, like, you're asking if you can relate it in this way. He's saying they're different. Maybe you can relate it, but they're different. I said, there's similar to the degrees or stages that we see in the legal system, and he said, karma and its results and the legal system are different.
Okay.
As far as, you know what I mean? Yes. Priscilla, yes.
Question from a little bit different perspective. What about somebody who takes an antibiotic
Okay.
and to preserve their own health, and in that process is bacteria and other small living things?
Definitely.
Or, and expanding on that, what about programs of public health where there is spraying of large land areas to get rid of, for instance, mosquitoes to stop the spread of malaria? So the mosquitoes die and the protozoa die, and to preserve human life. And where does that fit in with all of this? Thank you.
Unfortunately, I think we're gonna all not like the answer that it's all killing, but okay. Then the ngatu supo nala the bu mambo yure. Then the sansan the bu ngatu supo nala natsa yongudu gangisena the natsa yondu. Then me kashe sana bu segudu. Then bu yimba senchen yimba senripa ke lengudu. Then ngatu me masana ngatu the chikshena shigure. Then sanlo garre ngatsu suchupi le the me sana suchupi le yimba gangisena the senchen ngatsu ha kogudu ngatsu the gupa yomare ngatsu the me sana senchen sega
다 나로 름바 여바 젬바 드셔야 그다 내 사바 있는 버셔서나 버셔 디바 용어로 다 용어로 해.
If you're taking the medication in order to kill the bugs in your body, you are killing. Then the Arijung, the Sansan, the Du, the Sanshan Shinkan, Du Shagdu, Gangisena, the Bu Mambo Yona, and Me Mambo Sheda Nagare, the malaria, Jakarla, the Bu Suja, then Sheda Nagdu. Then Sansan Arijung, Du Shagdu. Then the Suchupa, Kontriwa Nipa.
수제바다 얘기를 그 제가 그냥 주로서
Killing. When the government or whoever puts poisons down in order for the spread of malaria not to happen, they are killing all of those beings because they are intending on doing so.
가방문을 가지시 보고 말했어. 가방문을 가지려고 말했어.
But this isn't something we are able to say to the government. So this isn't something like Rinpoche is saying it's not what we're making a political statement. We're not doing that. So we're not able to say that to our government.
It sounds like killing is inevitable. Pause. When is killing just fine to do?
The dakpar ngatsu suchupu de jandu gangisena de bu sena yene that sansan suchupa digrebe sansan kontriwa suchuna
수준은 이거를 세야요 말했어. 근데 그 소소 강에 대해서는 수주야 계속은 수주야 그러다. 수주는 아버지 수주에서 나고 말보다. 수야는 수고랬어. 수주는 아버지 나요 말했어.
So there is no case where we can say it's good to kill. There is not an example we can give because we're in a class on Buddhism, so we would not be able to say there are times when it's okay to kill. So killing is not something that we say sometimes is okay. Then that's the calling the Chikshina the Shanchu Semba.
다 디바 먹어 줘도 어때? 파신 TV 샹추 semba 두번 tul 나와레스. 수주는 무슨이야? 그 가자도 그거 산지기 템바다. 시즌 뱅도나 샹추 semba도 세 디바요 말했었네.
Now this is 10 non-virtues according to this vehicle. If we look in the Mahayana vehicle and we look at the Bodhisattvas, there are cases where if through their clairvoyance and high level of realization they recognize that through killing this will somehow benefit the person that is the basis as well as other sentient beings and will be of benefit, then it is permitted to engage in the killing. Then Khonsur Dipa Sadhue. But they do not, it is said that this is not a misdeed at that point. But this is in the perfection vehicle. We're separating that from the lesser vehicle, just as a note. So this is in the higher vehicle, and this is specifically only relating to highly realized beings who have that clairvoyance. Yes? So if you have tantric abilities, and there is a case where one you must kill because of the things just stated, because of benefit, etc., and you do not, then you're breaking a tantric vow.
What about like Arjuna? Arjuna has permission.
Nagarjuna? Is that the question?
I thought his name was Arjuna.
There's Nagarjuna.
And there's
There's so many, but there's
the one in the Hindu who kills his relatives.
Hindu.
The high up. I thought it was Arjuna. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. But there's a case of Buddha in a previous life when he was a riverboat captain, and he killed a person on the boat who was going to kill everyone else on the boat because he knew this out of clairvoyance. So that's an example of what Rinpoche is talking about, of the previous life of Buddha. He was a bodhisattva as a riverboat captain. And then there's a couple of other previous stories, but that's the main one they relate to.
This
is different. But this is different than what we're talking about. This is a specialized case with a highly realized being who's at a specific level. And in general, the Buddha stated no killing, period. And you can see how strict it is when we say that even taking an antibiotic or doing something which seemingly helps the masses is still the worst thing, which is killing. Yes, John?
So then, just to clarify about the antibiotics, is it... I'll wait for the mic. Okay, when we're talking about using an antibiotic as being the karma of killing, is the basis then is that like definitive that the basis is a living being, meaning microorganisms, bacteria?
Ngatsu supo nala bu yu. That's seme drupa. The bu yure. Seme drupa. The kangi sen ripa de kelandu. The ngatsu sanje de kelansu ngatsu bu nangla yure. Yeah, in the text it definitely says that there are these alive beings that are sentient beings in our body.
Are they equivalent?
20,000, 21,000.
But in science we say many billions, like this and that. They're.
We also have a Mount Meru, man. You know what I mean? So
I mean, are they equivalent? I mean, can we really say they're equivalent, the beings talked about in the text and this being
then
talked about in
senripa
science?
bu dang nampi bu ngatsu supo nala chipa. So the scientists have the ability to be really specific and then count with a machine. They take a machine and they're able to really look and see how many of these bugs there are or not. So we could say, when we say are they compatible or not, we would say that science has this extra ability to be able to use the machines to look at and count how the numbers are. But then there's probably many things that the scientist machine can't see also. So we can say that they can see many of these things, but there's also things that we have to agree they can't see at all. Maybe the Mount Meru.
In the instance of driving a car, if we drive a car from point A to point B, we don't have the intention to kill the bugs on our windshield. So do we get that karma of killing those bugs on the windshield?
Motodana bu seidu. Yine ngatsu gulong yomare. Gangisena ngatsu the Connecticut, New York drogu. Bu segu mare. The me sana bu segu. Yine motodana name bu segre sano yomare. Then the kakare.
So
motodana. You don't have the desire to kill when you're driving, didn't it?
디바메스 울도.
So later on, we get into these points that even when you're walking, for instance, you step on something you don't necessarily see, you don't have that motivation there for killing, so it's not the act of killing. So that would be the same as when you're driving a car. You're not setting out to drive the car to go kill something, you're driving the car to get somewhere.
What is it?
That's what is said. True, Abbot.
Then draw more.
Many questions. Yes, one more question.
One unfinished point about those antibiotics. Anybody who takes those antibiotics are killers to this point of view.
Yes.
Well, unless their motivation
Nice.
is to heal, not to kill, then it's not.
But to heal, you have to kill.
But you don't have to have the motivation to kill.
I don't know. I don't believe it. I think that you have to kill them in order to heal. But you're not. But you aren't blind and just staying in the dark. You know you're killing them, and that's how you're going to heal. Correct?
But isn't it better to
Most
just die?
adult Americans would, yeah.
Most adult Americans would. So we have to establish that as the basis for our discussion. That.
But I don't know if knowing your action's going to kill is the same as having the motivation to
Oh
kill.
yeah, because driving, you know your action's going to kill.
So, I'm not
That's a
done
good
with
point.
the whole antibiotic thing. So, it's better to then, it's better to just die with the microorganisms in you if you're going to be more pure.
Then the true what? Suchupa dipa chembo. Ngatsu the me sana, ngatsu bu suchuna. Chikshena kongi sampa, ngatsu me sagamari. Then ngatsu shina digare. Gangen sena ngatsu suchupa pongu.
Then say I'm a suit the number you have a shame matters. Dada Koton and Churumenta Sasana, Dada Kotumbusa Mentena, and Dada De Sagro.
Then Nika Yimba.
Tangasum be of a jingle to Dada Shego. Nazu no lumber years ago, and Azumi Toma, Shema. Shemas. Jeva share come marva, the no lumber, many teacher don't use it. And then I should share come daughter. Megan Tomodo, Anju go Modu, somebody share cup.
So Rinpoche is just raising more for us. He's saying that can we establish that we have these bugs, that we have them? And he says, and I said, well, we can through inferential valid cognition. He said, you can't see them, you can't hear them. The doctor can tell us that they're there, but the doctor is the one who's saying they're there and you need to take these. But that's, anyway. So the doctor's saying that you have to take these things. We can't be certain whether these bugs are present or not. It says there's 21,000 that are there, but to have the certainty is difficult. So I guess certainty about the basis. So this is a questionable part of it, is that the doctor's the one who certainly knows that these organisms are there and has to prescribe this pill because of those organisms. So that's a certainty. But whether or not we as individuals really know that we have these things, it's questionable. If when we're taking it, we're really able to establish that we're...
Not all antibiotics work the same. Some just don't let the organism... Not all antibiotics are the same. Some don't let the organism just reproduce.
Me de kashe bu segamari. The mezansha kalu. Then bu manga yongomare. This is something that doctors understand, Rinpoche keeps saying. Yes?
One more?
We're in microcontraception.
We all care very much about you. And it would hurt me if your doctor prescribed an antibiotic to make you healthy and you turned it down and we lost you. That would make me very sad. And I understand that you have a choice, and yet it would make me sad to think that you didn't think about the people you help by being alive.
And this is not saying Rinpoche doesn't take medicine. Let's make that clear right now. He's not saying don't take medicine, and he's not saying he doesn't take medicine. So
Except we all have that same
certainly, certainly.
Other people count on us, and so.
Konnichiwa de Yul Chang. Chang ngatsu kanga shiragaldu. Chang ngatsu kanga shiragudu. Gangisana Chang ngatsu gegen. Chang nana me matsana Chang chikshena dron tudu. Then ngatsu nugare. Gangisana ngatsu gegen yomare. Then this sanlo garre. Said Ted helps me with all my medicine. I think that's the answer. Yes? Next?
I'm talking more about the right to die naturally and pure and rot. I'm not trying to get anybody to say it's okay to take the meds.
No, he's saying
I'm trying
he's
to
not
get
saying
it to-
either way. He's just
I'm trying to
presenting the
get you to
facts.
Pin him down to, let me die and rot with the microorganisms in me. And that seems like the more pure way.
I said that so clear. He gave the discussion about the doctor's the only one who really knows if they're in there.
Well, I don't agree with that. The doctor can do swabs and show me, and I can know too.
Then
So I'm
Colin just
saying
said
what I know.
remember the par ngatsu tontudu. Then par bu yure. Then ngatsu the seme drupa yure gangin sen the par tonson. Then matsu par tona. Then ngatsu me sena. Then ngatsu suchu. Then kongi tsampa chikshena me ka. Then the semchen mase. Then a jewa shema yagdu. Gangin sen ngatsu dapa.
Ngatsu ta nasal gabayo maras. Dungen suchi debayo maras. Deba mesa nayo du dadal jajuris. Dada me tegre. Das ajeres ta. Ana beshes una jayo mar. Beshe mashe ngatsu agu maras.
So then we have to go to the doctor. Rinpoche is just reiterating. We have to go to the doctor. We have to have the doctor diagnose. We have to keep our body, this basis, healthy because we do not want to suffer. We do not want to feel sick. So we go to the doctor for that. And then we should take the medication that the doctor has given. There's a whole discussion also on the other side of this about the precious human basis and the rarity of achieving it, and the chances are you won't get it again anytime soon. So there's another part of this discussion that would come into play here, the how rare it is to get a human basis, and we went over that over at least 6 months of how rare it is and difficult it is to achieve based on a section of the text. So that might, you know what I mean? Be part of it. The doctors are really the ones who know. They're the best. They're the ones who prescribe what we really need. Ngatsu lu the yishin norbul hapa. Then ngatsu this sanlo dangu. The may the kali kabudu, the Jew kali kabudu, the mambo. Rinpoche, I told him what I said about the human basis and the difficulty of achieving because the causes are difficult, examples, etc. And he said that that's a very good thing to say, and that's a good point also to make within this, about the human basis and the preciousness of it and the rarity of it. Getting another one is very, very difficult. Decent. It's Karma J, you're it.
Okay.
Decent, kind of decent.
What the suji what the sutu santana what the suji the rebo down suji pompe gawa what the supen san mabutana what the
So what we should be practicing is what we arrive at through understanding the benefits of abandoning non-virtues activities, the negativities of not abandoning, and the benefits of engaging in virtue, and the negativities of not engaging in virtue. So we then once we study this and understand it, then it will make us want to engage in the virtue and abandon non-virtue because of knowing both of their results. This is why texts such as the Confession of Downfalls, the Tongshadan, Confession of Downfalls, confession in general are very important.
So the
ethics which abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities are ethics or behaviors that we can engage in, we're able to engage in. So they're very important because they're things that we certainly can do. So if we can abandon 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, and any that we can't abandon, engage in the confession or acknowledging our downfalls, this is very good. So it's important for us to have the ethics which abandon the 10 non-virtuous activities. If we wish to be born into the higher realms, if we wish to achieve the results of hearer, solitary realizer, or the bodhisattva results, or complete Buddhahood, we find in the commentary entrance, Chandrakirti's entrance to the middle way, where it says, for ordinary beings, those born from the Buddha's speech, those whose natures are certain, self-enlightened, or can conquer as children, there are no causes of certain goodness or high status apart from ethical discipline.
Okay,
so that's enough. We'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. And thank you, everyone. Questions are very, very good. And again, these things that we're questioning are debates that take place in Drepung Sera and Ganden over and over and over again. This is what they're debating about. So it's the fact that we didn't arrive at the answer means we're just doing what Buddha said. Cut it, rub it, look at it, and check it. So we're checking this material by discussing these things and questioning them. And so that's what Buddha wants us to do. No blind faith. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, the spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuji Rinpoche Gutsi Shapi Denro Na, Lamrim Chenmo Con Trail Na.